We are recording.
Something's going on at Sterling, there's a fair or something?
Festival, annual festival, and they don't want all the people to.
They have to close the airport's closed, and so the guys want to go flying if they did.
You drag this on the runway, that kind of shit?
They come up and they'll, you know, they brought everything up here and the guys want to fly.
Yeah.
Did everybody look at the minutes from last week?
Yep. Would you like me to make a motion to accept the minutes of last meeting?
Yes, if that's
All right,
so
motion.
desires. And second?
Yes.
Okay, we'll start with the old business and hit Gale Associates.
Perfect.
Go here.
Hopefully all of you have a copy of Gail's monthly project update.
What was the
Yes.
date of this minutes?
If not, we have extra copies here.
2 weeks ago, August 14th.
Yep.
Everyone else set?
Yep.
So I'll just jump right in. I'll try to keep it brief. I am going to do a quick presentation on the alternatives. Today I know everybody had an opportunity to review Chapter 6 at the last meeting. So I'll just kind of walk through the alternatives and then request everyone's vote as we go along, but I'll go through Gail's update first. So the runway reconstruction project, on page 1, project 1, well I guess page 2 of 4 is really where the new items are coming into play. So main apron has been reconstructed and accepted at the final walkthrough on August 27th. I know there were some flooding issues at the airport during some storms earlier this summer, so additional erosion control measures were installed to help that vegetation establish and try to alleviate any further flooding. I guess if there are any questions, I'm going to try to keep it quick, but just stop me at any point. One outstanding item that is included as part of the runway reconstruction project is the airport's industrial stormwater pollution prevention plan. So that's required for any industrial facility effectively to let EPA know how the airport is managing stormwater. That is something that is on our radar to complete for the airport. We've actually pulled together a good portion of the draft report. I figured rather than bog everybody down with another report today, we would hold off until a future meeting, try to get through a little bit more of this master plan process, and then dive into that at a later time. But just wanted it to be on everyone's radar for now that industrial stormwater pollution prevention plan will be coming. Any questions on the runway project before I move on?
Where is that mentioned down here?
It's on page 2 of 2,
Okay.
and it's the first blue bullet there.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, so it's right there. Any questions? You all set, Jim, on the runway project?
Yep.
Good. Okay. So moving on to the master plan. Really the new items are on page 3 or 4, so chapters 1 through 5 are currently in draft format. They're on the airport's website now. Thank you so much to Isabel for getting those up there so the public can view those at any point. And there's an email address for comments and whatnot. So if anyone would wish to comment on the first 5 chapters of the master plan. Today, like I said, we'll be getting into the development and evaluation of alternatives chapter, which is where we basically take all the information we've learned about the airport, the existing conditions, the demand for certain facilities, any sort of deficiencies around the airport, and we say, okay, what projects do we need to implement in order to correct some of these things or to meet the demand? And that's chapter 6 that you all should have received at the last commission meeting and reviewed. So I'll go over that. I know the commission has been waiting for a response on the hazard beacons. We filed through OE's airspace review system, and I think, Robert, I know you were included on that email to Tracy.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
did respond back to you.
I saw that, yes, thank you. And I did get a letter actually today from Tracy with respect to those beacons. So there was some language in there that said that they were deemed hazards to air navigation, and there were some mitigation measures that were suggested, but I'm waiting for a little bit of clarity from Tracy McGinnis, who submitted that letter, just really wanting a little bit more of a direct answer on, should the airport just plan to remove these things? Is that the best course of action, and is that appropriate at this time?
So they're deeming them at right now as hazard.
Yes, because they protrude above the airport's protected surfaces.
And they're no longer light up.
There's that too.
Right. So again, the mitigation
The
measures.
tree line out there is viewed as an airport protected surface. It's protrude, where the beacons are protruding through the tree line. Is that what you're saying?
So surrounding the whole airport, there are various protected surfaces going out. You have the approach surfaces. I wish I had a diagram in front of me, but you have the approach surfaces coming off of the ends of the runway, and then basically I'll just walk over here and kind of show you. So you have the approach surfaces that come off of the end of the runway here. Oops, I just bumped into this, sorry about that. And then surrounding from up and out from the approach surfaces, you have a transitional surface that, comes kind of along the sides, and then it's about a 4-mile radius around the entire airport. Matt, am I way off base there? It's about 4 miles surrounding the airport. There are higher levels of protected airspace surrounding the airport, and the beacons are located, various locations that are identifying, I believe they're identifying terrain at this time, but FAA has said that in some cases terrain beacons are no longer necessary. So the answer we've been trying to get, as Robert knows, from the FAA for quite some time is these beacons that are within that protected surface that were once basically lighting something that was or is considered to be protruding that surface. Does the airport need to continue to maintain those beacons, or are the beacons themselves hazards and need to now come down? That's the question that's still outstanding that we've been waiting on an answer for. So hopefully that's somewhat helpful. I know it's sometimes more questions than answers with these things.
Well, I have a feeling is once they deem them hazard, we take them down, and then they're gonna turn around, oh, we need them back. That's what's controlling.
Hey Jeff, are those beacons all lined up in a straight line?
No,
No, because
They're
the top of the hills are varying a little bit.
Yeah, they're
The high
at,
points that they're put on.
They're basically parallel to the downwind, right?
Correct.
Right. But they're not forming a straight
No,
geometric
they're
line.
not used for navigation.
no.
They're used just for illumination of the
Illumination of the high ground.
high ground.
they'll tell you just before you hit.
And it has to be within, they have a formula that they use, like off the sides, it's like a 7-degree angle, and off the approach ends, it's less for a lot of them. And I'm not sure what the figure is.
People basically use 2,000 feet in the downwind on in this runway. I do anyway. And then
Right, but you're probably closer to 800 feet when you're going over the beacons in the hill. Because you're
I
1,000 feet above the airport
I'm
elevation.
talking about atmospheric reading, 2,000 feet. I don't know what they're,
Right,
how far below they are when you're in the downwind at 2,000.
it varies because they're not all the same height, but it,
And they're not in the approaches, to be clear. They're
Right.
in the outer
They're on-
surfaces that are still protected, but
They're not a navigation device. They're
So,
a safety.
a warning.
correct.
thank you for your hard work, and let's hope in another 2 years, we'll get a final answer.
I will keep following up with Tracy, and get, get an answer, and if I can't get an answer from her, I will reach out to the airport district's office with her letter and, effectively ask them, what is the preference here? What does the airport need to do?
Yep.
So that's.
Because then that would be, if they need to be removed, that needs to be added to the master plan to get those removed with the monies needed.
That is correct.
Yeah, they don't necessarily need to be part of the master plan, but they're currently on your airport layout plan.
Okay.
I'm guessing on their
Yes,
old airport
that's
layout plan. So yes, if they need to be removed, they're on there, they would be, whether or not they're eligible for AIP funding to be removed, that's a different story, but yes, they're already on your existing airport layout
Okay.
plan.
Thank you very much for the
Yep.
clarification.
Yep.
So let's see, I guess, I can get into the alternatives presentation if everyone
Yep.
would be open to that? Okay.
Go for it.
Move around and go watch. Is that at least the second time of this?
Yes, yeah, the bigger section. So, I was fortunate enough to have a conversation with, Jim last week, and he provided me with a little bit more, a little bit of detail about a couple changes that, the commission wanted to see as part of the master plan. So you will notice that those changes are reflected and highlighted throughout the document, on each of the spreadsheets as we get there. So when you see a little highlighted area, that's a change. I think there were two brief changes, minor changes. We changed the total area of the non-aviation use area, Jim, because I know that there was one section that it was suggested should remain for aviation use, so we just reduced the area size a little bit, and you'll see that as well. And then the other change was we updated the location for one of the options for the snow removal equipment building, so you'll see that come up as well. Let's see here. So what we'll go over today, the purpose and objectives of the alternatives analysis. I think everyone has a pretty good sense, but just to give a little bit of review on that, we'll go over project permitting requirements just briefly, and then different funding sources that are available to the airport, because I know that that's very important. We're talking about capital improvements. Then I'll go over the alternatives and the impacts associated with those alternatives. At that time, we'll kind of go project by project, starting with the apron, and then moving into the options for your hangars, etc. And at the end of each section, I'm hoping to ask for the commission to vote for a recommended alternative to ultimately move forward with putting on the airport layout plan. And then I will go over some obstructions to the runway 1836 approaches, and then the next steps for the project. So the purpose and objectives of the alternatives analysis, effectively, like I was saying before, it takes the information that we collected in the first 5 chapters of the master plan and provides options for ways that the airport can address those needs. Very important to note that just because the commission recommends a particular project and votes to put it on the airport layout plan, it doesn't mean that you're committing the city to funding the project. It doesn't mean that you're committing FAA or the state to funding it. It's effectively your wish list of over the next 20 years, what is it that you would like to reasonably see happen at the airport? So permitting and funding, just to go over requirements, and this is in the introduction to the chapter as well that everyone received, that you'll see it on page 1 and 2, permitting and funding is outlined there, but there are basically 3 levels of permitting review that any project you undertake at the airport will have to go through, and that's starting big picture, the National Environmental Policy Act review, and you'll hear the term environmental assessment. typically there are different levels of national review that will have to take place. You either have a project that's considered excluded from needing review. You have projects that require an environmental assessment that basically reviews the impacts associated with any development on the airport, and then you'd have an environmental impact statement. And that would be basically the tiers of the review. Then you have your state, Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act review. There are a couple different requirements there. And then of course you have any sort of local order of conditions for your Conservation Commission requirements. As far as funding is concerned, everybody knows and has heard me talk about the Airport Improvement Program. Typical funding contributions, FAA usually contributes 90%, the state contributing 5%, and local share being 5%. With the new Reauthorization Act for fiscal year 2025 and 2026, FAA has actually increased the contribution amount to 95% for projects in those 2 years, which is great news. Mass DOT has indicated that they may be contributing 2.5% on those projects, which would then require a 2.5% local share, but it's still to be determined. They're still ironing out the details, so you know, things could change, but it could be a pretty significant savings to the city for any projects done in fiscal year 2025 and 2026.
So it's only going to be for 2 years on the fiscal year?
That's correct. Yeah, the 95% FAA funding, and then it would go, presumably go back to the 90% funding from the Fed. So, you know, there are two different categories of funding under that AIP program. You have the airport's entitlement money, which is the funding $150,000 a year that the airport automatically basically gets for any project that is, you know, considered to be eligible under the FAA's program. And then there's also discretionary funding that can be available for larger capital improvements. For example, a large runway reconstruction that would far exceed the $150,000 a year. There are a lot of limitations. There is a national ranking system for that discretionary funding, where effectively something that is a critical safety project would be given a higher ranking, like a tree removal project or a runway reconstruction project, and then moving down from there, taxiways and aprons falling into lower categories. So when you're talking about a national pool of money that's available to all airports that are under the national system, they're all putting in for these projects. The higher ranking projects are the ones that are going to get funded through that discretionary program, like your runways, like your tree clearing projects, and other safety related projects. There are also limitations on revenue generating projects. So revenue generating projects like, say, a fuel system, for example, hangar buildings, you can use your entitlement funding towards those projects, but you have to, number one, show that the airport has met all of their safety needs. So you have to complete all of your safety related projects first before it will be eligible. And then once you have undertaken a revenue generating project, you actually cannot take any discretionary funding for the next 3 fiscal years. So it's pretty limiting as far as that's concerned. So that's just the background on the funding. Massachusetts Airport Safety and Maintenance Program is typically funded at 80% by the state and 20% local. So those are, you know, a lot of times, you know, there are restrictions with the AIP funding, like you're not allowed to, you know, use AIP funding for maintenance projects. It's for capital improvements, right? So you can't use it for maintenance. But fortunately in Massachusetts, there is a state program that can oftentimes come in to assist with, you know, tree clearing projects, fencing projects, I mean, the apron that just, that just was redone out here. So it's less restrictive and can assist with those maintenance equipment, things like that fall into that category. So now that I'm done with that tangent, any questions about funding? Is that all pretty clear?
Where do we stand with safety?
In respect to,
Well, you said we have to meet all safety requirements. Are we not meeting safety requirements now?
so you would have to make sure that, and we'll get into this a little bit later on, you have to make sure that things like, if there are any trees in your approaches, those need to come down before you'd be eligible for those.
We're already doing
What about wildlife studies, are considered a safety?
Yeah, so that will all be completed, yeah, and then any critical pavement projects.
Okay, so we are already following that guideline already.
I'll get into, it seems there are some trees that
Right, but we are working on
yeah, absolutely.
that to making sure that everything in this facility, in this airport is perfectly, is safe.
To some degree, yes, for the most part.
All right.
Yeah, and that's part of this master plan process, as well as identifying the deficiencies is part of, making sure that all the safety aspects are, up to standards and whatnot. So yes, so even doing this master plan, yes, it is addressing safety needs.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So just, I guess, to jump right into the alternatives, the first set of alternatives were the apron alternatives, and that's going to be starting on page 6-4. You'll see the comparison table, and I know that it was said at a previous meeting it would be really super helpful to actually see the facilities imposed over the existing condition now. So that's what I've tried to do here. Some of the lines are a little bit faint because I brought them in from Google Earth, but you do have the backup plans with it as well. So
This, the plan in grade, I take it, figure 6-1-1, that is what we have right now.
No, this is the modification.
it's a modification. Yep. So you'll notice, and this
Same footprint.
this shows it a little. Yeah, it's a similar footprint, but you can see here where the tie down spaces
Two less.
right. The tie down spaces here under the new,
Okay.
and then the pavement area has increased slightly off of the edge here.
Okay.
So that brings you into compliance with all the turning radius that's needed on the taxi lane for your aircraft going through there. It's the appropriate spacing according to current standards for those tie downs. So that's your apron alternative
I
number
want you to be able to completely turn a small airplane around and,
So it's a wingtip clearance. So an aircraft would have to be able to come in here and turn without the wing clipping this aircraft here or this here,
okay.
and the same around the side here.
And they can't do that now?
With the way the spacing is currently, it's just a little bit off.
Okay.
So whether they can or can't right now, if you use FAA funds to go out there and reconstruct that apron, they're going to make you comply with the current design standards.
To the newest
That is
standard.
correct. So
Okay.
whether they're capable of doing it today, maybe they are, maybe they aren't, I don't know. But that new geometry that Jackie's showing there, that's the design standard.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we had option 2 as well. So this is, you'll see, the limits of the pavement are here.
Oh, cut that.
And then we lose a lot of tie downs.
Lose the tie downs here, and you'd increase, if the commission decided in a later alternative that you wanted to develop this area for hangars, it would open up this area for something like that. And so that really the purpose of this alternative is to open up that space a little bit more.
Yep.
Where, here, you just don't have quite as much room. And we'll just make sure when we get to that alternative, whichever apron, option you're deciding on is, compatible basically with any sort of hanger option that you choose.
Yep, thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome. So I guess I would entertain any questions about the alternatives, before, in discussion, before asking for a vote from the commission on which hangar alternative is the preferred alternative or the recommended alternative.
I would like us to finish all the ideas that you have here before we vote on each individual one.
They're kind of individually connected,
Okay.
I think there's.
Especially if we go to a smaller tie down and go to a bigger hangar.
And the smaller tie-down has the smaller cost.
Right, but it also has the bigger cost for the hangar.
Yeah.
The hangar will be more room.
Yeah.
So you
Sure.
decide between the hangar and the extra bedroom
Okay.
What's the purpose of this hangar?
to hold more planes inside.
Tie-downs, more
Additional revenue for
T
the airport.
hangars, rentals.
So how many T hangars are we talking about?
Pardon?
How many T hangars are we talking about?
The tie-down spaces, you
No,
mean?
the
The
hangar
hangar.
itself.
Oh, so you're looking to get into the next option?
Right, so
Okay.
That's why we gotta go through.
Okay, so hangar alternatives, yep.
that's on page 6-5.
So we have, alternative one, and I apologize if this is a little bit faint, but effectively you're tripling the space, that's currently designated to, that's currently designated to the T hangars as they are.
So that's an extension of the existing T hangars, the newer T hangars out there is all that is adding additional T hangar space.
Right.
So long as we can get into more extension.
But it's 3 times the size.
That's right,
Yeah.
yes.
And
And just to be clear, the commission is more than welcome to select more than one alternative under each specific category, provided that those are not mutually exclusive. So when you get into, hangar alternative 2, and then hangar alternative 2 goes with the larger apron option, and hangar alternative 3 would have, you can see that, as it is today, would cut it off. That gives you more space for hangars,
So-
but less space.
Yes,
So
and that's
how
what Dave had recommended.
Right, so how many planes can go in that hangar?
It really
Yeah.
depends.
But it depends on the size of the hangars you're building, and the thing of it is,
What you propose right there,
yep,
how many planes to go in there?
we don't know the answer to that, what size building are you talking about? How many,
That area that you have,
It
in yellow,
says 6
all
units.
So you're looking at, just I guess to do a quick calculation, you'd have to make sure that you have enough room for your taxi lanes, to get in and out of there and what have you. But if you're looking at 23,000 square feet for a 6-unit, nested T hangar building, alternative 2 is 79,000 square feet. So that total area there.
So alternative 2 was the extension 3 times larger than the one we have now. So how many planes do we have in the first T hangar?
well, that was about
6, so it'd be 18 planes
Yeah, be
in,
Well, it's
extra.
23,000 square feet per 6-unit building.
right.
So,
6 unit, okay, got it.
yeah.
So how many,
6 hangars,
So
6 T.
79,000.
And again, it depends on the specific layout that you'd be looking to implement, but, as far as, the master plan, what, we typically see is really designating the area, and then once you get into the design, if you were to get into the design of that area, then you really determine, what the right size would be, what your needs are in the area. But this basically gives you the opportunity to, if you had a developer come in and say that they wanted to build, hangar buildings, you'd have an area that was set aside for that.
but would that also include a new office and everything in that option 3?
Option 3.
No,
new office.
Just 2 units.
It's just a hangar and that's
just
it,
hangars.
nothing more.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then alternative 2 was just a bigger extension on the original hangars.
No, that's option one.
Option
Option
one is
one.
basically expand the existing area for T hangers that you have.
Okay,
Option 2 is the smaller area, basically allowing you to keep the apron as it sits,
Yep.
Today with the corrections the FAA would require,
Correct.
would modify.
all right,
And then option 3 here is basically the option where you reduce the size of the apron and you then would allow that space to be, developed into hangars.
all right. What's option 4?
There's not an option 4 in this alternative. At least not the one that we've developed for tonight. So, moving on, I guess, to the administration building and SRE building options. Again, just, mentioning again that you are welcome to choose more than one option if you would like to see a snow removal equipment building in one location and, utilizing a certain option for the administrative facility, you can kind of
Do you
mix
have
it.
this, the SRE building in conjunction of Plan 2 and 3? How that would affect it?
So if you look, the snow removal equipment building option 1 here, which is the alternative that changed, you can see that in either, it's in line with your fence, so you'd have access into this parking lot and then a building here, and then this would be, basically some pavement to drive. You may lose a tie down space here if you go with that option.
But that's leaving with having all the tie downs, if we went away with the tie
Well,
downs.
when they modify it,
The larger building, would the SRE building still be there?
If you went with the larger option, we can certainly shift the building, over slightly if the commission elects to go with a larger area for hangars. We will make sure that everything, fits how it should and fits together. So that's not a problem at all.
All right.
And then, so here's option 2, and this is over by the leasehold apron there, just right off of that pavement.
on the other end. Okay.
Yeah, and then option 3 is basically to convert this building
To an
into an SRE and administrative space together, so it would be a new building here.
I like that idea, yes.
And then this would be conversion of the leasehold hangar
The
to,
what hangar?
Kevin's
Oh,
Kevin's
Kevin's
hangar.
hangar.
way up the end.
I
Would
like
that be
I like that
a new
even better.
build? Would that be a new build, tear down a new build?
the option was for a renovation, is what we had discussed before.
They do that? They
As far as, unfortunately, this study, really did not include an assessment of that facility particularly. That was an option that was brought up far, far after we scoped the project. So that would have to be, additional review of that facility and someone coming in and really letting you know what could be renovated and what the cost would be associated with that as well.
Can that be done?
Will they pay for it? Will they pay for a renovation?
Right, but never mind, if they could give an assessment, then that would, if we could get an assessment of that building, then it would give us more idea of what that building really is.
Yeah, you know whether or not you can actually rent it off, you need to do a new facility in that
Right.
location.
So is that something that is an option?
Is what an option?
It says it requires additional.
To do an
costs.
assessment, would be an option and the additional funding from the airport commission to do that, though, do that assessment.
Any idea
And
of what?
whether or not it would be AIP funded, it seems.
That's a whole different story.
Yeah,
All right, just food for thought, that's all.
Yep, absolutely, and just also, bringing to, you know, everyone's attention, there is a lease on that space right now. My records show that the lease does not expire until 2039, if I'm mistaken on that.
The lease from Gardner?
Yes.
So that is a thing.
That's, again, if someone has better information than I do, but that's what was documented in the previous master plan.
I did not know that.
So that's another, that's another, just, I guess, item to consider. So just moving on.
Copy of that lease?
The fence alternative, really the options for your fence, are, you know, there's the full perimeter fencing, or I should have mentioned this at the beginning, there's always an option for a no-build. So if that's what the commission elects to do, there's an option for a no-build. Jim, you'll notice after we talked, I did have our engineers move this fence line down slightly from the previous version that everyone saw to maximize this area here for any sort of expansion, development, et cetera, that might go on. So that was some good input that I got from Jim. So that's, I mean, it's really not overly complicated. The you know, perimeter fencing, this would connect with your existing fence on both ends, and you'd be fully enclosed at that point.
And what's the purpose of the fence?
Wildlife exclusion, security, it's really a safety project.
And that's $600,000, correct?
If you did the whole thing at once, yeah.
Yeah.
6,000 linear feet.
And that's an 8-foot fence, 10-foot fence?
It depends, you'll be undertaking the wildlife hazard assessment and wildlife exclusion fencing. I believe the recommendation can be, is it 8 or 10
I
feet?
think it's 10 feet.
It's
10
10.
feet with barbed wire.
Yep. So if it is deemed as a result of the wildlife hazard assessment that, you know, wildlife exclusion fencing is necessary, they will make a recommendation in their report as to the height of that fencing. But, yeah, so hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And then the last set of alternatives are the land use alternative is, and I know the line is a little bit faint and the sun's kind of glaring here, but you can see we've outlined the area here, and this is basically the property boundary of the airport, you know, coming down here. And Andrew was very helpful and looked at some of the, you know, topographical maps and where this area really starts to increase in slope. And so we just, you know, the previous version was, you know, had encompassed more like this entire area. So we just backed this out so that I don't want to say flat because we don't stop flat out there, but the lower grade area we have now made sure was included still as basically aviation use and instead of the non-aeronautical use, which is this here. And that would give the airport the ability to pursue revenue generation projects such as solar and, you know, things of that nature that are non-aviation because it's an area that the airport is deeming that they do not need for aviation use.
And what is the total of that area? How many acres?
That total area,
Is that
87 acres, yeah.
87.1 acres, yeah.
How much of it is wetlands? Is that bowl area?
So it's we're using,
The wetlands are almost to the east, that stuff is pretty elevated.
Yeah, but
There's no wetlands up there.
it's delineated on that diagram.
so based on public resources that are available to us, and it would be, you know, certainly recommended that, you know, any developer that would go out there would need to delineate the wetlands and whatnot, but based on the information we know, it looks like they're approximately 6.9 acres of wetland in that area, so. And again, that's known wetlands with publicly available resources. You're welcome. And then the last couple options are the precision approach path indicators. And I've just included the runway 18 and PAPIs as alternative 1, and the runway 36 and PAPIs as alternative 2.
And what's the difference between these two?
So one is on your one runway end and one is on the other. So you could again select.
2 or 1A?
And what is this? Is this a unit that's on the ground or something?
Yeah, it's a nav
Yeah.
precision approach path indicator, tells you too high, too low, coming in.
So then that would hurt our cross runway.
It's a two-light system?
Yeah,
Sometimes it's a 4-box system.
Yeah.
Vertical development, vertical.
Okay.
great, but again, that would hurt our area for landing here on the grass.
It's gonna go.
Yeah, but I'm looking where it is. That's like, that's a
Oh,
quarter of the way down.
It would definitely shorten available landing distance and take off distance on a grass runway.
Correct. And that cannot be put back further?
No, they have to.
That's all prescribed based on the end of the runway.
It's set at a particular angle.
That's correct.
Correct, yeah.
That determines,
Does it have to be there? Do we have to have it?
You do not.
Safety.
It's a nice feature for pilots coming in and out of the airport. It's an additional nav aid.
Works good at night too.
It does work very well at night.
I don't know if it must have something to do too with the approach or your,
Obstructions.
yeah, your
Yeah,
approach level. Like right now we're at 800 feet
Yeah.
and it might be able to lower it down a little bit.
Jim, what are the colors of the lights that are typically found on a PAPI?
White and red.
And if you can't see.
How many lights? 2?
So if it's,
Minimum is 2.
right, if there's a 2-light system, the pilot wants to see 1 white and 1 red, and if it's a 4-light system, you want to see 2 white and 2 red, to know that you're on the correct path.
If it's all red,
If it's all red, you're too low.
you're too low and you're gonna hit something.
Yep, and if it's,
Oh, white.
Yep. You're gonna miss. Yeah.
See, it's all
Yeah.
fun now. Whatever happened to having skill?
There's enough asked of you, that anytime you're given an aid like that, you just put it in your pocket and make use of it. You know?
What are we putting, putting out?
If there's a little bit of fog around.
So,
Back on the, the level ground out there was nothing there. I don't know how far back into the woods, the area that you had for the
the non-aeronautical use?
non-aeronautical use. I'm wondering how,
Yeah, it really does come
isn't there some,
way in, doesn't it?
Yeah,
you know,
because guess what?
those trees don't start going uphill right away.
They're gonna land on the
Certain
grass,
amount
yeah.
of it that you can-
Oops. And I can see that happening.
I was thinking that this line here might be able to back up a little farther.
Yeah, that really put a-
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
The parallel
Could be
to the runway, this
bring it onto the east side of the runway.
could come up a
I
little
would
bit
see
more.
the lower
There's places in here where you can go in quite a ways, but here again, it's all hinging on
More words.
how that's defined.
Well, what would you move the line from? I guess I'm missing the part, why you're moving that line up.
Because it's reasonably level ground,
Yep.
that we could put a building
Things on the way, on the other
or,
side.
Jim, how about putting them PAPIs on the east side of the runway? What do you think? What's the comment there?
I don't know if there's room.
I don't think you have room for that either.
Can we
They
check
have to
on?
be,
How far off the center line must they be? I know to the south, all you need to do is cut down some trees and you'd have room, I would suspect.
what I was looking for.
So let's just pause for 1 quick second so we're not getting wrapped around the axle on like where exactly the PAPIs go. Because if you were to get PAPIs, or if you decided you wanted to pursue PAPIs, you would take a look at what the design criteria of those, work with the FAA to determine if they could go on the infield.
Are you saying
Can
that
they go on
maybe
the outfield?
Happy's automatically must be on the left side of the
No,
road
that's
as you
exactly,
approach?
that's why I'm saying we shouldn't get wrapped around that axle, because I don't know whether or not you could fit those on the inside, or if they would need to be on the outside. That would be something that we would explore if we undertook a PAPI project. This master plan does not dive into that level of detail. You need to coordinate with FAA flight procedures, and a whole host of other lines of FAA business,
All right,
so.
so this is just a proposed.
This is just a, hey, the airport would like PAPIs. Let's put it on our airport layout plan to have PAPIs. Then when you go and pursue funding for it, now you get into the details of where do we actually construct these, where can we construct them, so on and so forth.
Perfect.
Yeah, and Gale doesn't even do the design of those, it actually has to go through FAA. FAA does the actual design of them, so that's not even something that, you know, we can or are allowed to do in-house. It's really all on the FAA as far as where those go.
Thank you very much for the
Yeah.
clarification.
And I don't think I've ever seen a Pappy that wasn't on the left-hand side as you're approaching.
Where?
Nashua is on the left side.
That's what I said.
Yeah, but, and I think Laconia is too.
All right, well, that's
Yeah.
something to explore, so,
I think, yeah, I don't know where.
again, thank you for the clarification.
But it's, no, my thing was just to obtain land that can be reasonably
He said
used
that's the way to get out of work, so.
in here, that very, you know,
Who's flying there?
there's a lot of, before the hill goes up.
I mean, the good news, same thing with the PAPIs, if you designate that area for non-aeronautical use, at some point you'd go out and survey it. You know what I'm saying? So like right now, that's not surveyed, so yeah, at some point you could move that
We'll have
line.
to move that line.
You can move the line further
Because
back,
I
depending
think-
on where you want to lease that land.
Right,
I mean, I'm happy, Jim, to, you
no,
know, have.
I think we gotta get more information.
Because you want some elevation data out there, some topo,
Yeah.
some survey, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
it's-
that's,
Something
that's just broad brush, like, hey,
Yeah.
we could get some
No, I
sort of
understand.
solar
It's basically-
development.
I won't live long enough to see Pappy through.
Okay.
That's how we go.
All right, so what do you need from us tonight? We get a vote on what alternatives?
Yeah, the preferred alternative, so I can go back to,
Yep.
you know, I can go, just start, I guess, with the apron alternatives and get everyone's, you know, preference and vote, and, you know, if there are additional questions, I can take them. You know, so again,
Piece- I think it's important though, the piece that we eliminated and wanted to keep at airport was the field. We wanted to keep the field over across the road on the other side.
Right, you
Yeah.
don't have to designate, anything that's airport property currently is already assumed for aeronautical use. So
Right.
you just need to designate anything that's non-aviation that the airport would like to pursue, something else to generate revenue, because that land, you know, all that land up there, is it really usable for aviation use? Or could it be, you know, viable for some other purpose that would be a benefit to the airport?
Correct.
Such as income.
But why we took that one off the plan and want to keep it aviation with the idea that the fence can be moved.
Yeah.
When we put the gate, if we can do something with Kevin's building, then we would negate, this building and give ourselves access and put the fence out around that
Yeah, you could.
and have another access.
You're talking future, drones, VTOL, who knows what other stuff's out there that may come online, so.
That's what I'm
It's
talking
a
about.
good, I think it's perfectly fine, I'll leave that as is.
Okay,
Feel okay?
Yep.
Good.
that's because that was the original.
So the thinking behind the apron is just it provides more parking for all the planes that are not here now, right?
So the alternative one is effectively, you know, trying to maintain essentially what you have while making sure you're meeting those separation standards and whatnot. So basically, option one is keep what you have minus, you know, a couple of the tie downs, you know, for the spacing issues. Yep, and then.
Somebody has determined that our current arrangement of apron parking is in some ways insufficient, even though nobody's been hitting the wingtip. there needs to be more space than there is currently available, is that right?
Yep, so we review all of the facilities and again, a bird's eye view
It needs to be
against.
enlarged slightly.
Just a little bit, yep, just a little bit. So that's option one. And that, you know, again, making sure that we're keeping in line with the forecast and what we think, you know, on the busiest day of the year,
Like
thinking
today.
about this option, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is that gonna be enough? Are 7 tie downs on the busiest day of the year gonna be enough for the airport for the next 20 years? That's the question.
And alternative two?
This is alternative 2. So alternative 1 is effectively, you know, you're trying to maintain what you have, which is,
Okay.
this is 16 tie downs, this is 7. So option 1 is 16 tie downs, option 2 is 7 tie downs.
Bill?
I kind of like option 1, and keep as many tie downs as we can for 20 years.
Why would we vote for 7 tie downs? Why would anyone vote for that?
Well, because then it goes to
Do you have
the
a
other.
hanger?
Because
Do you have
then
hanger
you
demand?
have,
What?
hang
Do
on.
you have hanger demand?
Yes,
Okay,
Yes,
so
we
the
do.
question becomes, you look back at your forecast, take a look at what the demand is. If you have hanger demand, you're gonna drive a lot more revenue from hangars. Do people want their aircraft out on an apron, or do they want them in hangars?
I think we want both. I think you want an apron that's great and
Well, see, that-
voluminous and,
Right, but let me ask you this, so is apron alternative 1 keeping those same 16 tie downs, just say that, you know, well, you know, 16 tie downs, maximizing that space. When you
And
get
then go
into
with
your
this option.
hanger alternatives, you're tripling the space that you have. Do you need more space basically than that plus that for hangers? This plus this,
Yeah,
because
but
if you,
what is the size difference? That was my question before, between alternative 2 and alternative 1.
One was like 79,000 square feet, and the other was
Sure.
114,000
All
square
right,
feet.
which is which?
Alternative,
one.
this is 79,000 square feet, this is the 100 and, what was it,
14,000.
So, you know, my perspective is, I would love to see a bigger hangar here, because people would like it, because it's closer to the fuel, it's closer to the entrance to the runway, everything else, versus option 1, which is tripling the size of the T hangars we already have, and everybody trying to drive all the way down there, get their plane, and then drive all the way up, back.
So you're in favor of a reduced pavement for tie downs and increasing the square footage availability for hangars.
Right, that would be,
And then you can market that for whatever size hangar someone wants to come in and build, whether it be corporate hangars or additional T hangars. I mean, that's gonna be, you know, demand driven, and whoever's got the capital to fund something.
correct, because that would be more impressive, because people will be driving down here and seeing a nice new building and more planes, or I should say, or even less planes, because they can't see the planes that are in there, versus having a hangar at the other end of the runway where it's not really looked at, you can't see at it, so you have a
Yeah.
security problem already down there,
Yeah.
where this is in the general facility, the general area, and more people can look at it.
I think I disagree completely. If you
Yeah.
put in a giant hangar like that, you're not gonna be able to see the lovely airport when you drive into the place.
Yeah.
It's much nicer to have the hangars down at the far end where they don't obstruct your view. And you're compromising the ability to park on the apron if you happen to be itinerant. And so I have the reverse or opposite opinion about that. I'd go with that smaller, it's also less money, it's gonna be easier to put up that small hangar to the south that gives you like 7 additional T hangars.
Oh, it's 12.
This is
It's
12.
12.
All right,
Well,
whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
So we have a total of 18.
yeah.
But I think that they're basically are in an area that's already got a ramp.
You know, if you go to some airports, it's so built up, you can't even tell that you're at an airport. It looks more like an industrial development, for Christ's sake. And maybe somewhere in the middle, there's the runway, and
Like Fitchburg, you can't even see.
You flip back to
there are worse
the
examples than that.
full hangar.
Oh, the full hangar?
Well, yeah. Or is that,
This
see,
here.
that's why I was talking about this piece here. Because if you put a gate here, closing so that we have parking here on this area. We've got all this area out here that we can develop.
So then to that point, you would never see the entirety of the airport because Joe Public can't just access a gate there to get into the airport proper.
Right, that's why I'm using some of this alternative over here to be able to do some other things where they might look and see the airport out better. Because if we had a facility here, people could come in here and they would see. Yeah.
I guess my recommendation, just listening to both sides of the coin, if you don't mind, Jackie, would be to go, I mean, the hangar down, the alternative, whatever that one. Alternative one makes sense for someone that wants to come in and wants to develop that to continue to add on to those hangars if they so choose. It's an aeronautical use, it's adjacent to existing hangars. I think that makes sense. I would, on the other alternatives with the tie downs, I would go on your airport layout plan, I would show that there.
I agree.
Because that's the bigger picture, that's a much larger apron. When it comes time to construct the apron, you can always take a look at where you're sitting economically speaking, what you have for funding, and you can always tell the FAA, we don't wish to construct this full hangar, we actually want to reduce the size of it. I think it's easier to reduce it with the FAA than it is to go back and say, we'd actually like to add back on, even though we
That
took it
makes
off.
no sense.
So you're still leaving the number of tie downs that may be necessary today, the 16
Well,
tie downs.
How many planes are out there right now?
Whatever it is, you'll have availability for transient aircraft to come in using the full apron, and you still have the ability to build additional hangars in that grass area
Right,
if somebody comes up and they're like, hey, I've got the money, I want to build 6 box hangars out here. You can let them go ahead and do that,
yeah.
if you so
Because
choose.
then you can, it's just a matter of fencing and gate and.
No, you're already fenced in where that green.
Yeah, that's
green
in
would
the
be,
fence, yeah.
They can put it there.
Yeah,
There's, part of the problem with that was elevation. Between
are we still talking the green area?
this green area here, the distance from here to here is a slope.
Yeah, you can.
And
You can get that.
Well, we could fit it in.
Precluded them from putting that hangar up here last time, I believe. Because it was gonna.
Cost was probably a factor in all of that too, is my
Right,
guess, and you guys
right.
are paying for it, so.
Right,
Not the same problem when you do it down fire.
well,
So if you're at the end of the hangar, you're already 5 feet off.
Right.
Higher.
right,
Yeah,
And
But
so
that
you
requires-
build up that grade there, then you might have a problem with your center line to high peak.
yeah.
so that
And
has
then
to
you
be.
probably be fixed to just one area to go out.
But the nice thing about that is we got fill.
Hmm?
We have fill.
Yeah, what?
Fill.
Oh, Phil, yeah.
Fill. Dirt.
Yeah, but we're just voting on alternatives.
But
This
that
is
would
already
be-
in stone.
That's,
Because
yeah,
that
that's
is
why I
a set in
say.
stone. So as far as aprons go, my recommendation, based on, like I said, what I was listening to, would be to go with option 1, because you can always back off of the full-blown option.
Okay, I agree.
Does everybody agree?
I do.
Is that
Can I
is there
get
a
a
motion?
formal
So we're gonna make a motion to accept these.
So detail hangar or apron alternative number 1, what are we doing precisely, please?
So motion to recommend, apron alternative 1.
And what does that encompass? Now that-
It eliminates 2 spots
That's it.
on each end.
It's, yep,
So you
it's,
have
It's
the
that.
clearance.
So how many planes do we have right now, Jim? Any spaces right now, how many?
Right now we have.
Right now, we have 2 more than what,
Okay, so we
That
cut it by 2, we don't
Right.
increase the size of the space, we're just modifying the spacing, is that correct?
correct,
That's
yeah,
correct.
compliance
put in a little
standards.
bit
Yeah,
more width,
I'm for that, that's fine.
more distance between, because the light.
So you wanna do a vote?
Yes,
All in
please.
favor?
Yeah.
Yep,
Aye.
Right.
unanimous. Thank you. Was that 5? 4?
So that goes.
And then we have your hangar alternative, so I think we know what the options are here. Hangar alternative 1, which is increase the spacing for your existing T hangars. Alternative 2 is the one that would go along with the
Yep.
size, yep. And then alternative 3, we've kind of eliminated now because we've decided for the larger apron.
All right, so I guess we're gonna go make a motion for alternative 1.
One.
I'd go 1 and 2.
You can go for both?
You can go for
Go for
both,
both.
yep.
Well, there you go, let's go for both and both of us. are
1 and
happy.
2 gives you all the options
Yeah.
to revisit that.
Okay. So we make a motion for hangar alternative 1 and alternative 2.
Alternative 2, now the hangar, is it a T hangar or is it just a straight hangar? You got the access to it.
It's just designated for future hangar development.
Oh,
So it can be a box hangar, be a T hangar, whatever there is a market for, you're just designating an area.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's kind of why we will do it this way sometimes. I mean, for this alternative, I think it makes sense because you have the T hanger there, you're expanding on what you have, that makes sense. But here, you know, do we want to limit ourselves with what we're saying we're going to do? We can just designate the area, put a hatch on your airport layout plan, and just designate future hangar development. Yep.
Yeah, to put it into perspective, if I'm a developer and I come in, I'd be coming for the airport commission for this body to say, I'm interested in building, 2 5,000 square foot box hangars. You as a commission can say, let's look at our airport layout plan. Yep, we're authorizing this, but we want these to be constructed down this end of the airport. Because we're reserving the other end for maybe T hangars or something else. So,
Thank
All
you.
right, so make a motion to accept hangar 1 and hangar plan 2. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Okay, so getting into administration buildings, snow removal equipment buildings. So we have your 4 options here. Number 1 is a snow removal equipment building off of the main, tie-down apron that we've been talking about here, that would also connect in with your existing parking lot and fence line and whatnot. Number 2 would be a snow removal equipment building off of your lease apron. Kevin's,
Right, Kevin's. All right, and the third option is redoing this building.
redo this building, and the 4th option is to renovate that building. But again, both options 4, 2, and 4, you have to remember that there is a lease there.
Right.
So,
Go for
Well,
it.
there's also,
Alternative 1.
What is the redoing this building to make it the SRE building? It's option 3, or is that option 1?
option 3 is
Option
redoing this
3.
building. Yeah.
Point 4.
And it's worded as an administrative and SRE building here.
I would like to see that. Anybody's thoughts on the other options?
Building near hangar 5. Right over there.
Okay, but what do we do with this building?
The freestanding SRE building, it's a new construction, it doesn't entail dealing with any of the existing structures. What alternative is that, please?
that's only 1.
1, yep, this.
Where does
this-
it go, right there?
Yep, right,
It'd be back-
basically
back
right,
away
right across from where,
Yeah.
right across from where we are
I
now.
prefer that, the simpler the better.
His method.
It's cheaper too, 1.5.
That's why I think alternative 1 on the hangar is also the simpler the better, one step at a time, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
Okay,
So my,
For the people that are going to be out there, going to plow and snow, they walk through, go right into the building. You have it anywhere else, you tread, if you get deep snow,
yeah.
That's
you're
true.
treasuring the ways to get out there.
Yeah, that's true.
you can drive to that
Yeah,
hypothetical location, right?
Right, yeah, the city comes down and plows just
Yeah,
the
so
road.
it comes
So
right
all you do is
down.
go through the gate.
Well,
Gate's right there.
We'd be plowing snow up in front of it, so we've got a snow bank we have to go through. But
so
that's not trudging
Right, yeah.
100 feet.
we'd like to make a motion on the SRE building for alternative 1 for a vote. Any discussion?
I would like it larger, but that's okay.
You're only gonna give us so much.
Yeah.
Right, and keep in mind too, just because the alternative is shown as a certain size here, if there's additional justification for something that's, a different size, it can be explored more at the time of the project.
Right.
We're just basically saying, yes, FAA, we justified an SRE building, SRE equipment building, and this is where we'd approximately like it to go.
Okay, so all in favor?
Yep.
Aye.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. And then getting into the fencing. So the fencing alternative is really, you'd be voting to adopt alternative 1 and put full perimeter fencing on the airport layout plan, or a no action. I would strongly recommend that you put it on your airport layout plan. We will be going into the wildlife hazard assessment, and if it is deemed to be necessary, you know, you just want to show that it's justified. It doesn't commit you to funding it, it doesn't commit you to actually, you know, constructing it, but if, you know,
We can remove it
funding,
if we need it.
in a perfect world, if
You may never
funding,
install it.
right,
So,
or you may install it in portions, I mean, you can do that too.
all right, I'd
So-
like to make a motion, fencing alternative number 1. The second?
The only question I got is, Pokey.
Yep.
Pokey's got a
Right,
written
so-
agreement.
Correct, all right, so
Yeah,
how do we keep that agreement that we have with him?
He's
and
got a
his
swing
fence?
fence agreement, so you just have to have some sort of access gate.
Just to-
out there.
Okay,
Go
so
through.
that will be
Yeah.
covered for him. We can put that in
You
here
would- Yes.
in word that Pokey has access to a gate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether it's a swing gate, motorized, I have no idea.
Right.
That comes when we do the
Okay.
design of this thing, but yes.
So can we just make sure that gets written in there? If we
If
do a fence, that there's access.
is there some sort of legal document or something that guy has?
I believe there is.
Because,
I mean, 'cause in other words, what we'd wanna do is like put a little footnote in the master plan and like have that as an appendix, so there's some reference to that, so
we'll
that
find
people
it.
don't lose sight of that.
We'll find it. He is the original person who made this airport.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
needless to say, if he didn't do what he did, we wouldn't be here today.
Right, but years from now, if you're no longer in the commission, or you move, and we're not here, and someone doesn't know that information, at least if it's in the master plan, there's a footnote, someone can say, what the hell is this?
We'll
This guy sit here and-
we'll find that paper.
yeah, if you find it, and then we can just put it, include it as an appendix
Yep.
to the master plan.
Yep.
Who's gonna do that, just so I can take note of this?
No, we'll find it out. First, I'd have to call Tom, or you wanna call Tom?
I'll talk to him every morning.
All right, John will take care of it.
Okay,
You know, I was wondering if they could, for emergency.
Yeah, oh, that's what I was gonna say. It gives us a
Secondary entrance.
secondary backup plan if we need it, especially when you have things like air shows
Yeah.
and things like that.
Fire trucks could go
The,
there.
that would be,
The only problem is part of that, you come down the road, comes to that little
I
turnout.
know,
If you want to get onto his taxiway, it's actually his property.
yeah.
So, all right, we'll find the paper.
It ain't like.
That's why I say we need some more for the fencing, elevations.
Right,
And we need a lot more topo.
All right.
If you went straight down to that road, if you try to cut across there, that's all vertical right there.
yeah.
Right.
All right, so can we get a vote, a second on this,
On the fencing, yes.
with the amendment?
Yep.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Land use alternatives, really, again, the option is to either designate the area indicated here for non-aviation use, or to, you know, vote not to designate, so.
I vote we don't designate it as a non-aviation use.
That's the one over across the way.
That's right.
Yep.
Leave the damn thing alone, let it generate, you know, oxygen and absorb some carbon dioxide and
We may have to cut
keep the
trees.
population down.
We may have to cut the trees.
Well, it's fine, whatever we gotta do,
The
but
ground cover will generate the carbon
I can
dioxide.
agree with David on that.
They want to leave that,
As non-aviation use.
well, that is,
You
you
want,
just said two different
No,
things.
it has to be aviation use for us not to do it.
You just wanna go with the no option alternative on that, you don't wanna designate anything, you just wanna.
you wanna leave it as it is,
Leave it
leave it
as
alone.
Leave it as is.
Okay,
All
okay.
right, so we make a motion.
Motion to,
This isn't Boston, you know?
motion to no action,
No
right?
action. All right, any second on that?
Yep.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Done.
Okay, so we will not add this to the ALP, that's perfect. And the last two alternatives, and again, you can adopt one, both, or neither. Alternative one is for the PAPI on the 18 ends to get you that navigational equipment there. PAPI alternative two on the 3/6 end.
I make a motion we adapt for both 1 and 2. And that'll give us the option to see whatever, anything and everything we need to
In the
do.
future.
Good call.
All right, can I get a second on that?
Sure.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Done. Aye.
Perfect. Okay. Let's see, so,
Oh, I thought we were done.
sorry. I know. I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention, I know when we first got into the master plan process, we had very little obstruction information off of your approaches. Well, we were able to obtain some obstruction information locations from FAA flight procedures. I will say, add a little caveat here that this information is not verified, so I would just say, just keep that in mind as I'm bringing up this plan, because it does show, you'll see the red areas are indicating known obstructions that we've already talked about, and you'll see little yellow circles with pink plus sign in the middle, and those indicate points where FAA flight procedures has obstructions basically within their database system.
Can you point them out, because I cannot see color?
Which end is that?
This is 18,
Okay.
and actually I can give everyone a plan as well.
So those are the things that we need to remove?
So,
Possibly, we need to verify and confirm them. As Jackie was saying, they're not,
They're not
they
on
come
there.
from FAA, but they haven't, there's no flight check that we're aware of that has actually confirmed that they're in fact.
When did they top those trees? That was before I came on.
Yeah.
That was quite a while ago,
Yeah, of course.
So
but
Maybe at the same time we
can
cleared
you
the hill.
point out the different
Yeah.
colors?
Yeah.
Red.
was it that was at the same time?
Yellow is,
Yeah. A long time.
Jackie, what's yellow?
so the yellow circles, and you'll see they're, kind of dotted sporadically here, indicate the tallest point in a grid where FAA flight procedures is showing a penetration to the approach surface. It doesn't necessarily indicate one point or one tree. There could be a very tall object in that area that is above everything else penetrating, and then there could be other items that are lower than that that are also penetrating that approach surface, but they're just not the tallest point. So it's the tallest point in a grid. So you can see, according to their database, there are many areas with obstructions, and this is the runway 1-8 end, and then this is the 3-6 end, dotting all out here. They're all listed as vegetation and terrain, so some of them may be terrain penetrations with trees on them. So again, I'll just say the data is, it may be outdated. This is just the best information that they have in their system. Where they obtain this information from,
Is this airport land?
No.
not all of it, no. So you can see,
So if it's not airport land, how do we
If somebody's got a tall tree, and a lot of these are trees,
fix it?
so you would have to negotiate with the property owner to obtain an airspace easement
Yes.
to access and remove the trees. So again, I would say, let's wait until we have a little bit better results and better data. The airport is undertaking that 18B survey as part of the runway project. That will provide us with point data of actual trees and where they are located. That survey doesn't include, analysis of of those penetrations, but if the commission does move forward with any other future projects and environmental assessment, we can roll any sort of obstruction study and analysis into another project so that you save, basically administrative costs and whatnot associated with that.
The count of all those circles, if those are trees, that's 65.
They're points, so
Well,
it
there's
doesn't,
65 points.
Yeah, there could be a lot of trees is what you're getting at.
yes.
Correct. That's
Right.
why, without any sort of concrete data, without someone
But-
flying these approaches and actually getting us the actual data, it's kind of difficult hypothetically.
Right, to get, but the other thing is that if any of these landowners really wanted to be a problem,
Mhm.
that can shut this airport down.
It could displace your threshold, certainly,
Yeah.
but it
What do
wouldn't,
when you say displace the
Yeah.
threshold, what does that mean?
means that,
Yeah.
The point you can land and touch
Further
down
down the
on,
road.
yeah.
Shorten the airport out.
Yeah, so there would, what they would do is they'd indicate that by a bar basically painted on the runway, and it would tell pilots, nope, you can't land until this point effectively,
Okay.
or wherever that's deemed to be.
Yeah,
But that's-
the date on this is 2008.
And this is.
So, yeah,
So,
so,
that may have triggered the topping that they did back then in the tree clearing over there, so.
so again, this is new information that we've received from flight procedures,
All right, so we can't even go by anything on here.
it's just hard to speak
Well,
intelligently about something that there's no backup data.
But we have, it's something that we need to bring to the commission's attention. It's information we have, it's information that we know. It does indicate that there is likely an issue with penetrations to those approach surfaces. And it's something, something that will need to be addressed, so.
I'm pretty familiar with this. Every time I come in, there's a bunch of trees right here, and you gotta just stay high, and then you drop down quick for the runway.
Yeah.
What runway is that, David?
3-6.
No,
excuse me, 1-8.
Well, there's 182.
It's not in our grid of land.
It's right here.
No, but it's not in our grid of
Yeah, I
land.
understand. Anyway.
So-
all right, just growth. All it is.
Very.
So I guess we can just, again, keep that in mind when we're talking a little bit later on, where Matt's gonna get into the airport's capital improvement program and what was discussed at that CIP meeting that recently took place. So I guess when we get into that, just keep that in mind. I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware.
Cut those trees in the winter time,
Yeah,
cut them in the wet time,
yeah,
and water,
And then,
Which one's that?
down here. We waited for winter time.
yeah, 3-6, where it was frozen.
Yeah.
And of course, they got Richards using the sand pit. That's changing shape and everything in the last 16 years.
All right, what's the next thing we gotta look at?
so this is, just to let you know what's gonna happen next. I will take the votes, go back to the office, incorporate them into chapter 6.
Yep.
I will pass chapter 6 along to FAA and Mass DOT so that they can review and provide comments and feedback. I'll request that those comments as soon as possible. From there, once we have the alternatives decided, we can move into the final chapter of the master plan, which is the schedule of improvements, and that's when we talk about what's gonna happen in the next 5 years, what's gonna happen 10 years out, and then what's gonna happen long-term, 11 to 20 years down the road. Then from there, we'll develop the final ultimate airport layout plan. That is where you have your existing conditions plan, and we'll superimpose all of the recommended alternatives onto the airport layout plan as like a future proposed plan, submit that to the FAA, they will review it, and then they will provide any sort of comments, final comments, we'll address those, and then we can close the project out and you'll have the final master plan and the final airport layout plan, and that will be what, the tool that the airport can use for the next, 15 to 20 years as far as, planning developments and whatnot.
Awesome.
So, that's all I have on the master plan. Any other questions before I move in? Okay, back to the project update, page 3 or 4, project 3. Actually, I guess it's more on page 4 or 4, the wildlife hazard site visit. So the grant for the project was issued on the 30th of July, and the contract between Gale and the airport, or the city, was circulated. Actually, this says the contract is awaiting signatures from the city. That is no longer true because I got the contract back today. So you can disregard that. I will bring to the commission's attention, it was recommended by Newark Ecological that since the grant funding was issued so, later in the year, that the commission wait until the springtime to actually conduct the survey, because that's really when the birds and the critters and everything are the most active, and you're gonna get probably the most value out of that assessment if you wait
Turtles
until.
don't come until June.
Okay. So that was the recommendation by the wildlife biologist. If it is the airport's prerogative to move forward sooner, certainly we can do that, but it would be my recommendation to go by what the wildlife biologist is saying, and go with her recommendation to wait until the spring. If
But that's not
everyone's-
for our benefit. Our benefit is in the middle of winter time when there's nobody running around.
So if there's, I don't really need a vote on that, really just general concurrence to go with that recommendation.
That's fine.
Okay,
Okay,
We can do that.
okay. That is all I have. I'll turn it over to Matt to talk about the capital improvement.
Yeah, I have some more master plan. I'm just kidding. Last page, this one here, the Excel spreadsheet. This is the airport's capital improvement program. So just as a reminder for those of you who may not be familiar with it, every single year, the Airport Commission meets with the FAA and Mass DOT to talk about the 5-year capital improvement program for the airport. This year was no different. The meeting was held on August 26th. Isabel and Jim were in attendance virtually, as was myself and Jackie and the FAA, and representatives from Mass DOT. There was a lot of discussion, obviously a kind of a wait and see with the master plan projects shakeout. Typically following the airport master plan is the environmental assessment. So before you can move forward with any of these capital improvement projects, as Jackie was speaking to as part of the master plan, you need to go through that layer of NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act review. Some of the projects are categorically excluded. They don't require any more review. Some of the other projects do require that environmental assessment review.
Right.
So, and again, keep in mind, these numbers that we're showing here are placeholders, because we're still showing in fiscal year 2025, the federal government only picking up 90%, Mass DOT 5%, and a local share of 5%.
Right.
For fiscal year 25 and 26, that's going to be going down to 2.5%. We are just waiting for additional guidance from FAA in order for us to actually update this to reflect that. So just stand by until we get further guidance on that. So I am showing the environmental assessment in 2025. There was a comment from Mass DOT to include the MEPA environmental impact report as part of that. Based on the projects that we're going to be exploring as part of the environmental assessment, I don't believe that MEPA is even being triggered, and therefore I don't think that project is even warranted in 2025. That's something we'll take a closer look at. The obstruction analysis that Jackie was mentioning, so the 18B survey that's being conducted as part of the runway project will provide information in there that would allow us to do an analysis, take a look at both your approaches, 18 and 36,
Yep.
specifically identify where the obstructions are based on that known flight survey, and then give you guys a much better picture of where the obstructions are on airport property and off the airport property.
All right.
There's a vegetation management plan that's also in here. I'm showing that as an 80-20 split. I'm waiting on FAA to get back to me. I believe that's an AIP eligible project, so the
Okay.
local share on that would actually go down.
5% or 2.5%?
So 2.5% for fiscal year 2025.
All right.
The vegetation management plan, that is necessary to essentially outline all of the airport's protected surfaces, as Jackie was mentioning earlier. It would show where the vegetation obstructions are. It would actually put together a plan for the airport commission to address those vegetative obstructions. That plan is necessary so that when you go in front of the local conservation commission to do tree clearing within wetlands, you qualify under the limited project provision from the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act. That allows us to get way out into the approaches where there's wetlands and actually do the tree clearing out there.
Okay. Isn't that kind of double dipping with the environmental impact report?
So it's
It's an obstruction analysis?
So the environmental assessment does nothing as far as a vegetation management plan is concerned. There's no component in the EA to
Okay.
do a vegetation management plan.
So we're talking over $200,000 to do those 3 plans?
You are talking approximately, yeah, those numbers, like I said, aren't revised. Those are gonna be going down to 2.5%. Like I said, I don't think NEPA's triggered. The EA is most definitely something that the airport's.
And out of that let's say $220,000, is that going to pay for some of those removal of obstructions?
The obstruction removal, as you'll notice on this, is planned in 2028. So the way that we've set this up is, we assume that there are obstructions off airport property. The only way to remove those off airport obstructions is to get a neighbor that says, sure, I'll go ahead and do that for you guys and I'll pay for it and they'll do the clearing themselves. Or the airport has money or the city has money that they offer to them to go and clear the obstructions. Or a third alternative would be, if you get an abrogation easement over that property, the federal government and Mass DOT will contribute the 95% funding to do the tree clearing on those properties.
So then we'd negotiate an easement thing with
Correct.
those owners and say, by the way, we'll take care of these trees.
Correct. So based on the CIP discussion we had on the 26th, the way we've laid this out is, in 2025, you essentially get all of your environmental assessment, any sort of NEPA permitting, the obstruction analysis, and the vegetation management plan out of the way.
Yep.
The obstruction analysis gives us that clear picture of exactly where the trees are, so we know what property owners we're dealing with. Then in 2026, you would go after abrogation easements over the off-airport obstructions on those private properties and negotiate easements with them. They do get compensated for an abrogation easement. They're paid fair market value. What you do is you go through an appraisal, a review appraisal, a survey process. You determine what the impact is going to be on that property owner. There's a fair market value calculation that comes into play.
Yep.
The property owner gets paid compensation for that abrogation easement.
So welcome to a new nightmare.
It could very well be a nightmare depending on how the relationships are with neighbors, yes. We've recently acquired 5 abrogation easements for Pittsfield Airport. That was completed, I want to say, in 7 to 9 months. We've had other abrogation easement projects that have blown up in the airport space and they take a hell of a lot longer.
Yep.
There's attorneys that get involved. Just putting that out there, that does happen.
All right.
So then in 2027, this assumes that now you have your abrogation easements. You go through your design, your bidding, and your permitting for tree removal on and off airport property. In 2028, you would actually do the obstruction removal. Then in 2029, we have placeholders. We have the wildlife fencing. In 2030, it's land, it's the SRE building, and then I'm not sure why land acquisition. Oh, that's a carryover, Jim. You had wanted land acquisition to prevent further development within the approaches.
Right.
So as you start getting to some of those out years, like the wildlife hazard fencing, SRE building, land acquisition, I don't get too crazy one way or the other what projects we stick in there. We just want the capital improvement program to be reflective of something so that the agencies know you have a need or projects that you're looking to establish.
And a plan to do it.
I think first things first, first and foremost, my opinion for the airport commission would be to conduct the environmental assessment, the obstruction analysis, and the vegetation management plan, assuming we can drive some of those costs down to get them to be 2.5%. I know it is a struggle to get the local share out of the city. We're very cognizant of that.
Yeah.
So we may not be able to do all of those projects in 2025. You may need to kick some out in 2026 or even 2027. Unfortunately, I made a comment earlier when you had asked if the airport was doing everything it needs to be doing to take care of all the safety projects, and I said, sort of. And what I meant by that is, if there are known vegetative obstructions in your approaches, you really need to start taking steps to address those obstructions.
Correct. So
You have a brand spanking new runway, new taxiway, new hangars with aprons. The last thing you want to do is have this airport end up with displaced thresholds because you have obstructions off airport property or on airport property. So the first thing that needs to be done is, I can tell you right now that the easement acquisitions and tree clearing are going to trigger the need for that environmental assessment. So that's number one. I think the obstruction analysis coupled in with that makes perfect sense, that we know what we're talking about as far as where the obstructions are, and can convey that to the airport commission.
Perfect.
Whether or not the vegetation management plan can fit into 2025, depending on that cost, I don't know. Maybe that needs to get kicked out a year, or even slide down into 2027 along with the additional permitting. I think that would be an okay approach. It would be appropriate, certainly, because it is tied into permitting. In an ideal world, if you could knock out all of those sort of necessary document projects and then move into the actual construction in the meat of the CIP, that would make more sense. But again, local share is going to dictate that. I'm aware of that.
No,
So
I agree.
is the 95% good for only 2 years though?
Our understanding is right now, based on the reauthorization, is that, and again, we're still waiting for guidance. If you heard Colleen from FAA the other day, they're waiting for internal guidance on how to roll that out. I believe it's 2025 and 2026 right now is the 2.5%, which kind of makes getting the bulk of this stuff in 2025 and 2026 a target of opportunity, because the local share is driven down on that.
Right.
Versus waiting until 2027 where you jump back up to 5%. So it's a balance. I know for the runway project, I went in and met with the mayor, myself and Armin Dufresne, if you remember Armin. We went in with Ken Bonk and met with the mayor and kind of laid out all of this CIP, what it means to the airport, what it means for the city. I would like to think that that was influential in him deciding to contribute the local share on that. I'm happy to do that again once we sort of decide what's needed as part of the CIP. Go back in and explain to them what the stuff